What's up, everybody? welcome to episode 74 of Unfiltered. I'm ChanManV, and joined today each and every week with the same guys each and every week, Destiny and Richard Lewis. What's up, guys?
All good, brother.
What's up, buddy?
And we have got a special guest today, first timer on Unfiltered. No, this isn't Value Town. This is actually Unfiltered. Want to welcome Mr. Andre Yanuk, aka Reynad, to the show. How's it going?
Oh, it's going good, man. Good to be here. This show's a bit legendary on Twitch. I'm glad to be a part of it for once. So
legendary, yeah. You know, it's legendary. It fits you perfectly, then, right?
Legendary for ending careers.
Legendary
yeah, that's
for
it.
ending careers.
Be careful, right?
Gotta have one to end it.
Oh man!
Don't say anything.
Well, lots to talk about today, of course, as usual. But I want to let you guys know, the folks watching, that we're going to be doing some Q&A, as always. So post that on the ChanManV.tv link, which I'll link right now. There's actually a Reddit link, too, that's on r/ChanManV. Holy shit.
Your own subreddit.
And I didn't actually post that. It's crazy. But,
I got told that I'm not allowed to have those sort of things, so I guess you're not allowed either, right?
I guess
Wait,
like if that gets,
I
if
didn't
that gets
post anything.
discovered by Reddit staff,
I didn't
they have
post.
to
Do you
take it
have
down.
a child named Chris Chan the Sixth?
Oh God! What the?
Wait,
fuck,
no, because I
Oh
actually
my
debated this for a
God.
long time. I'm sorry. Do you have a child named Chris?
No.
Wait, you're the fifth, and you don't have a sixth,
Oh,
like for your
my-
lineage?
oh, my-
You don't
this-
care
this
at all?
This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
What do you mean this is the dumbest thing? You
right,
have
this
five
is-
people in your family with the same name, and you didn't name a child Chris Chan?
Are we really? What's going on here?
Where-
All right.
where
Anyways,
will
guys,
you be?
You don't think it's a valid question?
this is like the oldest joke. This is like
It's not a joke.
This is like a 2-year-old joke.
It's not a
that we're doing
joke.
right now.
You
What the
said you're
fuck?
actually Chris Chan the Fifth, aren't you?
No.
I thought I asked you this before, and you said
No.
that you were.
Oh my God,
You
you're actually
fucking lied
serious?
to me. Never mind. All
fucking
right, carry on. Fuck you. It's fucking bullshit.
Dude, God, your mic is loud again, man. You need a compressor. Holy shit.
I have a compressor. I think your Skype. I think
no,
his
no,
Skype
no,
is
it's
just
just-
fucking ass.
turn your
right?
mic
Like I
down.
said, when we
Use
do
your
the
shitty
sound
fucking
check,
program.
you've just
Turn
got to
your mic
whistle
down a
him.
little bit.
You've got to whistle him in the sound
Alright,
check.
calm down. All right, just fucking calm yourself. Okay, carry on. Go. Next
Turn
topic.
your mic down just a little bit.
No, you told me it was too quiet before. I'm not gonna have my dissenting opinion be silenced because you lied to me about your fucking names, your family.
Turn it down just a little bit. Anyways, viewers, we're going to be doing patrons and sub call-ins too. So if you're interested in calling in, message Wars GG. He's one of the mods in the Twitch channel, and he'll arrange it. Basically, just got to get in Discord. We're going to be doing a Discord channel for that, and he'll explain to you the details for that. All right, so topics, lots of topics, just all over esports, and of course, with Ray here, we'll definitely be talking about what it's like to own a team right now in 2015 and in 2016, just this upcoming year, which is supposed to be pretty interesting for esports. But let's start off with real quick, just some stuff around esports. So Dota 2, Frankfurt majors going on. You guys following the majors at all? Have you guys seen any of it?
I
Anybody?
wrote a guide for it.
You wrote a guide for it. Like, what do you mean? Like,
Well,
How much you get
a
paid
betting
for that?
guide. The money's not relevant right now, Steven. No, obviously I got
money's
paid
not-
for it. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Like, it was fucking just having to research Dota, which I know nothing about. So it was a rough few days to hit that particular deadline, but we did it. But in terms of actually watching the games, no, I'm not going to go that far.
Reynad, have you been watching
limits
it
have
at
to
all?
be drawn.
Been following it at all?
Dota is like the one game in esports that I probably have like the least amount of knowledge on. I know absolutely nothing that goes on at the scene, and yeah,
So no plans for a Dota team, I'm assuming.
I mean, at some point, yeah, it's one of like the real esports, like one of the top three, like League, Dota,
Yeah.
CS:GO. Not in that order. I prioritize CS:GO like twice as high above the other two, but yeah, at some point, right, when the money's there, but that's a ways off.
Yeah, no, that's true. So I've been trying to watch it too. I'll be honest, like I've been trying to make myself watch a little bit of it since it's like the big event right now. But it doesn't have the TI feel at all for me, and particularly when all the broadcasts and stuff are in a completely empty stadium, so there's like this huge echo whenever they're casting, and it's I don't know.
I was just
it's
going to
really
say the
hot.
crowd has been terrible.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen numerous threads about it. A few people have tweeted at me about it, like, you know, is this the death of Dota or whatever? Which of course is
Every
it's
single
absurd.
thing in
It's
esports is
not.
the
Yeah.
death of an esport if it's
yeah,
not fucking
exactly.
good.
Like, an empty stadium, the game's dead, obviously. But still, I don't think it's a good look for your esport. Like, if
No.
I was Valve, I wouldn't particularly want that. So I
Is
would
this
be like, okay.
is this the one they ran a compendium for?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a lot of people complaining. There was a big thread up. I don't know if you saw that, where there were a lot of people complaining about the quality of this compendium.
Yeah, they said it was worse than the TI one by a mile.
Yeah.
Missing a lot of features.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, do they want to make these things like TI, or you know, are these just supposed to be literally mini events leading up to TI? Because I mean, I don't think they should make it exactly. I mean, TI should always be special, right? That's what makes it the Super Bowl of esports, right? Or, as people say.
There's a thread. I think I linked it. This had a lot, 3,300 points or whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like the problem is I feel like they should have made a separate brand for this. Like if you have a brand called TI and TI's brand is the established best tournament in the fucking world, which you can make arguments for on prize pool alone, right? And it is a really well run tournament of a very popular game. One of the top 3 popular, I guess. I don't know if Hearthstone is
Yeah.
top 3 or not, but like definitely one of the top
esports.
4.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. When you do an event that doesn't have the same prestige as the other internationals, I feel like I feel like it's inevitable that you kind of weaken that brand. It seems like a really strange decision to make to try to run a tournament under that same brand, knowing that tournament isn't going to be of the same prestige as the other internationals.
Well,
I don't really understand the rationale.
Well, it's
there.
not called the International. I mean, it's just they're just introducing the whole majors thing, right?
Oh,
It's
is
kinda
it
like
not?
CS:GO.
Okay. I
Yeah,
thought that
it's-
because it had like the compendium rolled into it, it felt like that it was
No,
trying
it's
that it was kind of like it's run by Valve.
Yeah, it's run by Valve. It's just it's the introductions of majors.
Like the problem with
okay.
TI
Gotcha.
is that it just puts like all the money of the year into that one tournament, so they need to break it up, right? So the
Yeah.
fact that their majors are good, but then the compendium thing, I agree with you. It's weird that it's like kind of like it feels like a mini TI, which is like you should make a separate brand. But I also think that crowdfunding for tournaments is just like the future, and they should do it as much as possible.
Yeah,
Maybe they should have done something different than a compendium. I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
I think the compendium's fine, actually. It's just they probably should have introduced some new features. I hear an echo, by the way. Somebody's.
Oh, my bad. Let me.
Yeah.
It's fine.
But yeah, I mean, I agree. They should have at least added more features that they don't do in the international, so they could have introduced something new and have a bit different. But yeah, this major, you know, there's definitely been other events, Dota 2 events that have been not the international and still been very successful, like the ESL 1 event, right, in that stadium. I mean, they packed a stadium full of people, didn't they?
Well, ESL are going to be. I mean, they probably. Well, not probably. They'll definitely never admit this publicly. But I imagine ESL are one of the few people rubbing their hands at sort of how poorly it's all gone.
Right.
Because we know when Valve came in and wanted to sort of take control of these major tournaments and basically outsource the production, you know, to whoever was successful enough to pitch for it, kind of like how they do it for CS:GO.
Yeah.
ESL, of course, stand to lose profits on this, and you know they're not handling every facet of it in the same way that they have in the past. So I imagine they're quite pleased that it's been a bit of a failure because it might force Valve into sort of reevaluating how they do things moving forward.
Right.
Which is you know good for them, good for ESL.
Yeah, so the viewership hasn't been the greatest. I mean, it is like the second day. That, you know, this is like the early rounds, and even TI's early rounds weren't the greatest too. But I don't know. I just thought it was weird that they have them actually go into the stadium instead of like a separate room, you know, and having all the early rounds be done just not on the stage. But hopefully it picks up as the weekend nears, and you know this event will end up being a success. But right now, definitely doesn't seem great. And
Somebody really wants me to tell you, Richard Lewis, that ESL runs this fucking tournament.
People don't understand linguistics. They're not controlling every facet of it in the same way.
Not the
that they
marketing
have
of it.
before. I don't know how plainer I can make it. But if retards want to type shit like that, then fine.
Okay, well, he typed it in all caps, so I assumed it was pretty important.
Yeah, and I mean, look again. We've established that when
Right.
we deal with the esports audience, words are very complicated. They don't understand them, so that's fine. But anyway, ESL are not controlling this to the same degree they have previous ones. It's just that simple. I don't care what's officially out there. That's a fact. So there we go.
All right, so let's move on to League of Legends news. So there's one big topic, at least in the last few days, which was NRG. NRG is entering LCS by essentially buying Coast and just transitioning that way. The big discussion here is basically they're coming in and replacing all the players. So some of the community are really, there's some backlash from the community. They're saying, like, should the players be protected? The Coast players brought them to this point in LCS, and now a team can just come in here and buy them and just completely just oust the players. And is that fair and all that good stuff? So what do you guys think about that?
I'll
let
go
Andre.
first.
Yeah, Andre, why don't you start?
But I thought Reynad, as a team owner, might want to give his views.
Yeah, I mean, every game kind of has its own rules. I don't remember the exact details on like ESEA, for example, for like invite slots. Yeah, I don't think you can just like qualify and then swap a 5-man roster. I'm pretty sure there's like phases that it has to happen in. I don't know, man. This is how I feel about it. Like, being an esports athlete is probably the hardest job in the industry. I don't even know if athlete's the right word, but gamer or whatever. Like, being a pro player is easily the hardest job, I think, as far as like time required and lifestyle. It's like the hardest lifestyle for sure and the most competitive. And if you're going to, like, if you're not the best option for a role, it makes sense to just be like naturally cycled out, I think if somebody is a better option than you, they should replace you. That's just how it works, right? It's unfair to the better player to lose out on that opportunity because of some policy where the worst player is grandfathered in. But I don't know, like, all of the details with LCS. Like, maybe they can only swap 1 or 2 players at a time. I assume you can't just like swap all 5, can you?
I thought that it was written that there were up to 2 or 3 swaps allowed after you'd qualified. This was years ago, though. I don't know if it's changed. There's got to be like a link to like the actual rules on this.
Yeah, I mean, no, but basically the rule is, I think they only have to keep one contracted player.
Yeah,
and equally, I think it works. I don't even know if you're obliged to have that person start. So you can keep somebody on in a token position as a substitute, and as long as they're still contracted, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's the rule. They've tried changing this recently, I think, to try and prevent things like this happening. Because this isn't by no means the first time this has happened. I think Copenhagen Wolves pulled something similar in the Challenger series not that long ago. Yeah, so I think they've altered the rules, but they don't seem to be very effective. And ultimately, when big money comes calling, they'll get what they want anyway.
I think another big thing here is it's really, really good to like encourage. I don't want to limit the orgs at all in doing everything they can to make the best roster, because when people look at League right now, they think that like, oh, it's one of the biggest esports, there's some of the biggest sponsorship money in it, but that's really only true for the top 4 brands. Like the bottom 4 LCS teams, guys like Coast that just like struggle not to get relegated every season. Like when a sponsor, like if you're McDonald's and you want to get into LCS, like I'm McDonald's, I have a giant dick in the business world. I'm not going to sponsor like the 8th best video game team in this game. I'm going to go to like TSM or Cloud9 or just like one of the bigger brands. So it's good to have like more teams fighting for that top spot. And I think that not restricting the player swaps is another way to help the bottom 4 teams like just like have more options to make a more competitive roster.
Yeah, I mean, look, the way I look at it is this. I've seen a lot of people come out and say, well, look, if this was a normal a normal sports team, if this was a soccer team or an NFL franchise or whatever, your play shouldn't be guaranteed. It should be commensurate to performance, and organizations of that nature could go out and buy better players and better staff. And that's absolutely fine, and it's a very good argument, or rather it would be if these players were being paid something commensurate to the sacrifices that they're making. And of course, first of all, with sports careers, they can be particularly long, and teams are sort of obligated to recoup some money for you as an asset. So they have to try and sell you. So if you're a soccer player, they're out there saying, "Hey, look, we got this player. He played. He got us promoted. We're in the Premier League. He's not good enough. we want to sell him now. We're taking bids of £3.5 million. Anyone want to buy him? Well, this doesn't happen, of course, in LCS or in esports in general. You end up with these farcical situations where players routinely do their best to earn an LCS slot and to therefore be allowed to compete in LCS, which is specific to their brand, by the way. Obviously, if you play a season in LCS, 2 seasons in LCS, 3 seasons in LCS, all of this helps build your brand and your reputation. Well, organizations are using players that are good enough to get them into LCS and then never allowing them to further build upon their brand or utilize their talents. They just get rid of them and bring in bigger names. And there are no protections for the players in this instance. They're not getting enough money to warrant this, in my opinion. You know, we all know how low League of Legends salaries are, and we all know how low Challenger series salaries are, and in some cases these players don't get salaries at all. They get food and board, and that's it, and sometimes not often food if you're Team Coast, which a few people out there in cyberspace will know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, this is why there has to be a revision of these rules. You cannot just come in, sell an organization, and then basically just wholesale take a roster out. There has to be some sort of tacit understanding that these players have earned the right to compete at the highest level. You cannot just say, thanks for all your service, but now we want to bring in some Koreans.
Yeah,
I think the market can balance that out naturally, though, right? Like, couldn't the players just negotiate contracts where, like, you know, okay, if you're going to swap me out of this roster, this is the amount of money you're going to have to pay me. Like, you're going to have to buy me out to roster swap me. Like, there are a lot of things contractually players can do to protect themselves.
Yeah, but the problem is, not to be rude, the average player is fucking retarded and has no fucking idea what they're doing when it comes to signing contracts. This is why you run into issues with people in, like, the Machinima network that have literally, like, lifelong contracts and shit, and they had no idea, or people signing contracts with no guaranteed salaries, or... I mean, in a perfect world, yeah, it sounds like it would be really good that players could negotiate, like, well-meaning contracts where they don't get completely fucked, but I think when you look at, like, the kind of people that play esports, you're getting these, like, young people that really don't have any experience signing contracts. Yeah, most people don't have experience signing contracts or whatever. And then you're kind of going into everything like you're playing video games and you have this, like, naive mindset that everybody's kind of cool and looking out for everybody. You don't realize, like, how hard you can get fucked, I think. I don't think players would look out for themselves as much as they need to.
Well, I mean, the other problem, of course, you've got is there are buyouts. Reynad's right. There are buyouts in these contracts. Unfortunately, the buyouts are all there for the organization. It's a very strange situation. The buyouts in League of Legends, and, you know, I've seen a lot of contracts and had them looked at by lawyers. This is how buyouts in League of Legends seem to work. It's basically just another form of reducing a player to an asset. And what you do is, the organization can sell that player for any amount they want, even if there's a predetermined buyout amount, because the buyout amount is there for the player to buy themselves out of the contract. There's nothing there that says we have to accept this amount to let the player out of the contract. That's not the wording. And players themselves don't receive any of that money. And there's no clause whatsoever that says an organization should have to buy a player out of their contract should they be deemed surplus to requirements. In fact, we still exist in this strange position where players seem to be bound by contracts until the ends of the earth. Like, literally, the contract just never goes away. They can't get out of the organization control. They can't do anything. And yet, actually, when it comes to the organization, they can renege on promises time and time again, don't even provide any basic fundamental rights or fucking recompense to the player when they want to leave and take their services elsewhere. They're very heavily skewed in an organization's favor, and always have been and always will be as things stand.
Ray, you want to say something?
Yeah, you're making it sound a lot more predatory than it is. Let me explain to you why a lot of those clauses are the way that they are. When you're a team owner and you're getting a 17-year-old kid to sign a contract, and this guy has never had a real job before, he's lived with his parents his whole life, just doesn't have a whole lot of life experience. Like Destiny mentioned, they don't, like, fully understand contracts too well. So when they get, like, bored, or when somebody comes along with a bigger check, oftentimes they'll just welch on the contract. They'll just walk away from it. They'll say, hey, I'm playing for this team now. And this is what used to be industry standard before those clauses were added.
Yeah, that's true.
And when they did this, you would say, oh, well, just pursue legal action. You have a contract. Well, that's really bad fucking PR. I'm not going to sue a kid with 100K Twitter followers. That's really, really bad business move, right? So I need to have those buyout clauses, not for the player. Like, every time those buyouts happen, the org trying to buy him out are the ones that, like, pay him to buy himself out of the contract. That's the reason those clauses exist. Where like in the event that a transfer happens, there's something on paper where he can't just walk away and I'm left helpless and I can't sue him because of bad PR. They're there so that the like responsible adult with the wallet that's buying him out can pay me basically to just make this go smoothly. And like this has happened only one time ever with my org, but it's like it happens very, very often in other games outside of Hearthstone. I think it's only happened in Hearthstone one time across any org actually. And it's like, is the reason those clauses exist, even though when you look at them in a vacuum, they look so like predatory and employer friendly. You have to realize that it's like a bunch of children signing contracts, and there needs to be something on paper for like the competing orgs to be able to like legally transfer them correctly. It's also illegal to like tamper with an existing contract, basically. And I don't know the exact issues, but basically like if there's a employer-employee relationship going on, like between the players in that kind of way, you can't like tamper with it as an outside organization.
That's tortious interference.
That's what
the American legal term for it. And look, I agree. I know exactly why those clauses exist. What my kind of postulation is, I think we've gone way too far the other way. You know, obviously I've been in esports a long time. I agree with you, especially in things like Call of Duty, for example, where people are saying like, "Hey, you're contracted," and they're like, "Well, where's the contract?" And it's like, "Well, he tweeted and agreed he would play for it." You know, like farcical levels of paperwork and legislation put in place.
You've been in esports for a long time, man. You've seen the dark ages. I agree with you. 6 years ago, like players would get fucked by orgs, and it would never be by like the well-established, like responsible orgs like EG that run like a real business or like Liquid. It would always be by these like some 21-year-old kid that wants to start a team, you know, and he will take advantage of these younger players. He'll take advantage of the fact that they don't understand contracts. But those teams have gotten weeded out. Esports is way more established. Those
Nip's still not playing players. Yeah, I mean
This is where we would differ. You see,
yeah.
I think back then, because the scene was so small, the fucking was relative. It's the difference between being fucked with a 2-inch penis, and not a very fat one at that. And these days you get fucked with a big 12-inch throbbing, veiny, unrelenting dildo. Like that's the difference right now. And I'll explain why I believe that. And that's because there's actually more money and more opportunity that players are being fucked out of. Players, to me, don't get their commensurate value in esports right now. And we see this time and time again, where organizations are able to go out and sign huge sponsorship deals predicated on the success of their players. Yeah. And yet there isn't a single clause in any of those players' contracts where they earn even 1% of that total money that comes into the organizations. And I think we would agree that's something that absolutely needs to change. And just specific...
I think I disagree.
I disagree with that, Richard. Like, I don't think they should.
Why would you disagree?
I don't think they should be rev sharing sponsorship. That's a completely separate thing. Like, what the value of a
player
hang
on. Let me explain my stance, and then tell me if you still disagree. So, a team of let's just say you're an organization and you have one team, okay, and your team is very successful. It wins a group of events. Let's say CS:GO, since we're all savvy with CS:GO. And they go out and they win numerous events, and as a result, kids like them. Kids want to emulate them. Kids want to be like them. Kids are downloading their config, coming to the website, buying their T-shirts, and then a big sponsor comes in, and they say, "Hey, man, we really like what your team's doing out there. It'd be so good for us to be synonymous with the best players in this particular scene right now. We'd like to offer you a check for $1 million to endorse our brand of hardware." And I'm going to make it hardware, actually. Because this is where it gets interesting. Now, the players that have been super successful using their own individual types of hardware, they're now going to have to change and use, let's just say, Logitech. Okay? I don't care what they were using. Uniformly, they must now all use Logitech gear. And the organization owner says, "Yes, I'll take that $1 million check. Thanks very much." He goes into the room and he goes, "Good news, guys. We've secured a big sponsor for the organization, and you're all using Logitech mice. But don't worry, they're going to send them to you for free." And they're all looking around and going, "Hey, but we like Razer." Well, no, you're using them now. And you're telling me, Chris and Stephen, you're telling me those players don't deserve even a slight percentage for that. But keep in mind, it's predicated on their success, and they're now being told what hardware they have to use, and you're going to deny them a percentage. I think that's the point.
I mean, it's just like whatever, like a college. It's like a college student that goes to a college and they've signed a Nike contract. They have to wear Nike. I mean, the player's contract with the organization is completely different.
Contract.
Exactly
So I think the problem.
Contract.
The problem is it seems like it's a little bit abusive. So I guess the thing is let's say that you join a team, right, and you're getting paid. Let's say that you negotiate $1,500 a month on a salary, and that's predicated on what the team can offer you and what your value is. And then as you're with that team, say your value grows and you reach a point to where you're bringing the team so much value that they can expand their sponsorship roster, right? They can expand their sponsor deck or whatever. If they end up securing a lot more financing via sponsorships and you don't get any of that, I guess Richard Lewis is saying that at a certain point, if they're multiplying their revenue by so much, it seems a little bit exploitive on the team side for the player, right?
Yeah,
it is. I mean,
can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead. No, Andre, just jump in whenever, man. Like,
basically, the situation you described cannot actually happen in reality and does not happen in reality. If a team comes in and they secure $1 million sponsorship, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to give their players a fucking significant raise, not a percentage, but a flat fee significant raise. And they have to do this because of the market. Otherwise, Cloud9 is going to come in and buy their team. Like, this is just how it works. The player is not going to stay on while the company is making more money, basically. If he has way better offers on the table, he's going to be paid like what he's worth on the market more often than not. Especially if they're a world-class team. All of our teams, they've had multiple raises, more than one. On top of that, the key thing here is, let's say, look at that period of time when the player negotiates that $1,500 sponsorship, and the team is making like no money from organizations, right? They're paying that player to play a game. He's making $1,500 a month. Is this charity? Like, is that what the business is doing? Like, they're taking a loss, they're taking a risk, they're investing in this roster. And if that roster actually performs well and pays off, all of a sudden they have to give what's essentially equity in the company, to these players because their risk happened to pay it off. It's just that's how risk in business works.
I'm definitely not
right?
talking about equity in a company. A one-off percentage.
Sure.
The percent
is an
When it's
equity.
like-
But just to Reynad's point there. And here's the thing. Look, I wish you were right. I wish you were right that organizations would. The first thing they would do is financially remunerate the players. I wish that was true, but actually it isn't. And my experience tells me it isn't. You might do it for your team. That's amazing. That would make you one of the better owners out there. I certainly know it doesn't happen uniformly. And there are a lot of players out there that have been successful. There's a lot of teams out there that have been successful. The organization has grown substantially, secured substantial sponsors and more opportunities, and been able to expand into other games. But they haven't actually rewarded in terms of salary revision, the existing players that have helped them achieve that success. And indeed, this is a well-documented fact right now. And this is where it gets even more complicated, is that there are a group of team owners out there right now who all talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And this happened before. Mm-hmm. This happened before with the G7, with Warcraft 3 players. They agree to fix a salary. So what they do is they say, how much are you paying your team? And owner one goes, well, I'm paying them 8,000 euros.
It's a union. It's a team union, basically.
Right?
Yeah.
But you have to use association for specific legal ramifications.
All right.
But they say we're paying ours 8,000 euros, and they go, okay. Well, when our contract negotiations come up, we are only willing to go as high as 8,000 euros. So if they come to you and ask to join your organization, will you stick to 8,000 euros also? And they go yes, and then they tell another owner to do the same, and they fix the level that you can earn. So
according to who, though?
What do you mean, according to who?
Well, you're saying it like fact. Where have you heard that's happening?
Like now. I mean, where have you heard that that's happening now?
It is. I can assure you it is absolutely happening right now. And it absolutely happened in the past. I don't even think this isn't a matter of record in terms of it happening back with the G7, specifically for Warcraft 3 players. I believe that if you were to Google that, you would probably find some news articles about it back in the dark, distant days. When Warcraft 3 was relevant.
Okay,
I'll tell you what happens.
That is absolutely happening right now.
Like during player negotiations, the team owners do go directly to each other and they say what they're paying the players, but it's not to fix a salary cap or anything. It's not like some huge, conspiracy to do that. Yeah. The reason that we do that is because if I were to go to some player, let's say like 3 orgs are talking to a player. If he's the middleman, he's like, okay, well, this guy offered me, one guy offers him 3K, and then he says that he was offered 3,500. And then like, okay, they're like, okay, we'll pay you 4K. And then he goes back to the first guy. He's like, oh, they offered me 5K. And like that's the reason we do that, right?
Right.
Because like the 17-year-old kids are greedy. It's and one side effect of that might be that like the players, the salaries are like lower than what they would have been, but it's not like it's not because we're trying to like keep money from the players. On top of that, let me just put it this way: like it sounds like you're putting very little stock in what an org brings. I think that if you go back to the old days of esports, or even just imagine a scenario right now where there's some world-class team that just like doesn't have an org, they would be making like literally $0 fucking dollars, right? An org brings that entire sales team. It brings a lot of staff, a lot of like behind-the-scenes stuff that's hard to appreciate, and like the overhead on it is astronomical. And I'll tell you right now, like esports teams, and I say this knowing what even the big orgs make. It is some of the smallest margins in all of esports. It is they're the businesses that work the closest with the players, so it's easy to look like they're taking advantage of them in a lot of ways, but it's also like where there's the least amount of money to be made, and at the end of the day, you're just trying to salary everyone and grow. And something like ESL, for example, the infinite money, like the production, that's like where there's the most money in esports, like by a mile. Big talent, like the top 1%, that's number 2. But then like a player or orgs are like the 10th best thing you can be doing in esports. Like fucking betting websites for CSGO are ahead of you. So there's a lot of risk when you sign a team. There's that entire period before you have those sponsorship deals where you are paying out of pocket on this investment, right? And when a sponsorship deal comes along, like that's the expected result, right? This is like, okay, it didn't go to shit. I didn't just burn a bunch of my money. A sponsor finally came along, and that's where you like reap the rewards as an investor. And that's just like standard business. And I agree with you that there are a lot of teams that have fucked players in the past. There are a lot of shitty things that have happened in esports over the past 15 years, but it's just gradually become better and better. And here in 2015 and 2016, the industry standard is just going to be, it has been way, way better. Like it happens so rarely, and anytime a small org fucks over players, they do just kind of get shunned from the industry, from the people behind the scenes. Like people refuse to work with them. A lot of times they're looking for a quick buyout. So at the end of the day, the orgs that have stuck around at this point, the ones that will be around in a couple of years, are gonna operate like more professional, traditional businesses, and just fewer people are gonna get fucked over. But I will tell you that right now, if I want to save money, it's definitely not going to be on player salaries. That's not it. As far as just like the pure numbers, it doesn't make sense. It's bad PR. It's bad for relationship building with players. They're paid very adequately when you run the numbers. They're paid actually more than they're worth a lot of the time. And were it not for the org that they play for, they would be making 1/100th of what they make. Like the actual like ability to go out there and sign a big sponsor. Do you think that like a player winning a bunch of Counter-Strike tournaments or a team winning a bunch of Counter-Strike tournaments is going to all of a sudden make like Pepsi or I don't know, fucking Logitech pay attention to them? No, it's not. Like it's going to be relationship building, a decade of networking. It's going to be sales.
So I think what like
wait, hold on a second.
Success is a very small part of it.
Hold on. Let Steven come in first. He's been waiting to talk real quick. And then
just in looking at everything, I guess, and then for Richard to respond, and looking at everything Reynad is saying. So Reynad is saying that like if you were to get a bunch of players that would sign like a 1,000 a month salary to a team, right? And then all of a sudden these guys are performing so amazingly fucking well that they're doing everything well, and then now this team is signing like huge fucking sponsorship deals. I think what Reynad is saying is that the team is always going to cut some kind of check to the players as a result of that, because if those players were bringing so much fucking value to that team that they were able to secure those sponsorship deals, if they didn't increase their pay, other teams would just show up and buy them up.
They might be cutting them a check, Stephen, but what I'm talking about here is commensurate to your value, right? So and that isn't happening. That simply.
Well, I guess that's kind of a matter of like, I guess in order to have that conversation, then we would have to have like very specific figures, because what you were talking about before, where like a player should be entitled to a percentage of like what a sponsor pays, that's pretty much equity in a company. Like that's about as close as you're going to get without actually calling equity, right? If I bring in like $100,000 sponsorship, now I have to pay out like a percentage of that to every player. I guess like what I guess talking about like what would commensurate value actually be? We would need like specific numbers to look into that. I think.
Yeah, and look, I definitely don't want to get into specific numbers because unfortunately I actually happen to know them. I don't think it'd be very professional to start divulging other people's salaries and whatnot. But let me tell you, it's that they're not as great as what people would believe. But just coming back to Reynad's point, where we're talking about what an organization brings. I actually go the other way. As somebody that's managed several organizations and even ran one myself, I actually think what an organization brings to the table in a lot of instances actually overstated. And in fact,
I can think of several counterexamples to that actually.
Okay, well that's fine. You're certainly more than welcome to state them. But I think a lot of team owners are in for a rude awakening in 2016 and beyond. I think players are going to create their own organizations. I think we're going to see player-owned, player-driven organizations in 2016. Well, and here's the thing: they're going to be able to get those sponsors with or without a deck being put together for them. They're going to be capable and self-sustaining, and they're going to take bigger cuts and get a bigger revenue share, and they're going to earn brands that are going to be more attractive than some even of the traditional and old standing brands. And just to a final point, Reynad also said that anybody that acts improperly will be shunned in this modern era, and in fact, it's quite rare. So, just in the last 6 weeks alone, we've broken stories about Ninjas in Pajamas, hands down the most successful brand in CS:GO, and they owed their players hundreds of thousands of dollars. The full details still haven't been released. I'm going to be publishing them, but let me tell you, these players were bullied, cajoled, and treated like shit by people who shamelessly profited from their efforts. And we've had one minor victory in the sense that Per Lillifelt has stood down. Rumor has it that he'll be getting a job somewhere else within esports, so it's not quite a case of ding dong, the witch is dead just yet. But we've also seen other organizations. We've got Fnatic, for example, putting in a power of attorney clause in their contracts, which they agreed was egregious and have agreed to revise. There's going to be probably about half a dozen examples I could tell you from the last 6 weeks. These organizations do not get shunned, and in fact, what they've done is they have created a cartel, I should say, because we know who they are. To basically further their own power base and interests within esports. This is undeniable. This is happening in front of everybody. So the idea that they would be shunned, well, who's going to shun them? Certainly not the fans who will seemingly support them to the ends of the earth and castigate the journalists that expose them, and certainly not the sponsors because they have the pre-existing relationships with them, and certainly not the players because the players are too scared that they won't get a salary anyway.
Okay, so
all right.
Certainly not each other.
So who is shunning them?
I can only speak to the StarCraft scene, but in the past, again, and I'll reiterate a point I said earlier, the average person is very fucking clueless about everything, and it doubly extends to fucking to pro players. Are just mind-numbingly fucking retarded when it comes to managing brands, managing social media, procuring sponsors. Like, I would bet my child's life against any reality where players are coming together to get sponsors. It'll never happen. It won't. Like, I understand the idea behind it, but players are too fucking stupid. And I don't know if Reynad would ever say, but like. I don't know, like what
Reynad did. Like, I'm a player that did it.
But it's definitely the exception. It's definitely the exception. Like, it can happen, but like looking in the StarCraft scene specifically, I can think of huge names, people like Idra, people like Naniwa, people like Huck. These are people with tens of thousands of fans who were on EG. They were getting paid EG's money. It was a really fucking good salary. But as soon as they kind of separated themselves from that brand, maybe like Idra and Naniwa especially, as soon as they separated themselves from these really large teams, they just completely feathered out into nothing. If these people were capable of securing of securing sponsorships and a livelihood on their own, I guess like Reynad has to some extent in the same ways that I have with all of my shit. Like, these are people that, like, Idra would be streaming every night with like 5,000 or 6,000 viewers getting tons of money. Naniwa would still have, like 4 to 10. Scarlet, all of these big names in the StarCraft scene. I can't speak to the other scenes, but like, all of these big names would have these sponsors and all of these things on their own, but the fact of the matter is they don't. Like, players need these teams to do this stuff for them, because there's no world where a player is going to go out.
It also has to do.
You should call XPK and ask how he's getting on with Origin. You should perhaps talk to Hotshot GG and Reginald.
But again, you're using the exceptions. You're using the exceptions. And also, like, I'm a cutie pie or whatever. Is he still on a? Is he, like, I know that there are a few like league players.
I don't even think he's trying to form an organization.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there are a few people, right? Or for my personal share, like, there are a few people who can get shit done, who can get sponsors on their own. But that's definitely the exception. The average person is literally like a 20-year-old like thumb-sucking retard that can play a game really well. I'm sounding really mean to players, but like, players are really, really bad when it comes to securing deals and financing for themselves and managing that. Like, the average person can't fucking do it. You will find the exceptions, right? There are the Reynads, there are the fucking Georgies. You'll find these people who are capable of doing it, but it's very, very rare. And there's no way a group of players is going to come together and figure it out on their own. I don't ever see that actually happening.
I think it has a lot to do with what game you're talking about too. I mean, here's the thing. Like, the times are changing. Like, streaming and becoming successful in streaming, the education of just streaming is becoming. People are starting to learn more. They're starting to learn that, hey, I need a manager, like people to actually help them with that. In the games where it's a team-based game, it's not an individual game, these managers, right, are essentially the teams, and that's what we're seeing. And the only exception is probably Hearthstone. Hearthstone is probably the one space where I feel like the teams are acting as like almost like a consultant agency, like for a lot of the players in a way, where like when StarCraft or even just whatever, variety gaming or whatever, all of these streamers have managers that help them with that. They tell them that, hey, you should be, growing your social media. You should be growing your YouTube.
Well, even on StarCraft, like, the managers are kind of a joke. Like, all of the people in StarCraft teams that got paid big salaries, they would have never made that money on their own. They wouldn't have made a tenth of the money they made.
But you're talking about like a year and a half ago. It's like a different time now. Like,
no, well, I don't. But the thing is, like, even people on like Dota teams or League teams or whatever, or Hearthstone teams, like, I don't think they would be making a fraction of the money they are now if they weren't getting started by the teams, because they wouldn't be able. Like, yeah, you can make money streaming, but from sponsorships and everything else.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, I still think, players generally are still uneducated just with the market and what their value is. But I feel like we're getting, every single day it's getting closer. Like the people are just becoming more educated in the space and figuring out how to monetize and things like that. But okay, we spent enough time on that. Let's move on a little bit. Let's talk to Reynad just from the owner's perspective. And by the way, Reynad, if you didn't even already know, Richard is definitely one of the kind of stalwarts in trying to get a players association together. So he's all about the players.
I think it'd be good.
Everyone else seems to have their own association. So,
exactly.
I think it's about time the players got one.
Players have informal ones, but.
It's been an official one. And I think actually overall, just having things formalized will just improve just all of these relationships. But Reynad, having you on the show, I definitely want to talk about just being a team owner. And we've definitely talked a lot about it already just with the previous segment. But I guess my first question to you is why own a team right now? Like, what's the big, you were talking about margins are really, are pretty small. So
that fucking sucks, man. I wouldn't do it again. If I could go back, I would make a production company. That's what I would do.
Oh, really?
Do you really? Wait, you said that earlier.
Wow.
But that feels not true. I feel like when you say like production companies have good margins, you're looking at literally what ESL?
It's pretty cutthroat too. The production.
Even mine, dude. We run events. I was the first person who wasn't ESL to do a Hearthstone tournament ever. I did it on my channel like in early 2014, and it peaked at like 75K concurrents. And
were you talking about live show?
Yeah, because I was gonna say when you say production
live
companies,
or online,
it sounds like live.
Yeah, live. Well, you start with online only events, and
like
once you have the staff to make it live, then you do live.
Yeah.
But you don't start off with $1 million camera equipment. You work your way up. But anyway, that's the best margins. Anyway, owning a team. What was the question about?
Yeah, basically, why own a team right now?
Like, why would anyone do it? That's the question.
If they're idiots, basically. I mean, like I have like okay, so my stream like blew up 2 years ago, and it was averaging 15, 20K viewers, and I got a bunch of team offers, obviously, from all the big brands, all of them. Mm-hmm. And then when I was like debating between all of them, I was thinking, okay, well, why should I sign with this team? Why should I sign with this team? At the end of the day, I was like, okay, if I sign with these teams, maybe Hearthstone stops mattering a year and a half down the line or 2 years down the line. Like, then what do I do? Then my stream goes down, my income goes down. So I wanted to do something like long-term in esports. So really it was just like wanting something long-term, some kind of business. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that came to mind is it's just like starting a team because like as a spectator of esports is the first thing that came to mind. I see brands like TSM being really successful. These are guys I've followed, for years and years and years, and really respect like what Reggie did and all that. So it's just like the first thing that came to mind. So I'm like, yeah, fuck it, I'll make a team. And the idea was that like as a player, all this naive stuff, right? Like I would treat players better, which I do. I would pay them better, which I do. But a lot of things like, oh, I would be a better talent scout for Hearthstone, which I think was also true. But that's like the reasons. I felt like those were the edges I thought I had over other orgs. I didn't think like the big brands knew what they were doing in the Hearthstone space, at least.
Which they didn't. They
yeah.
actually didn't.
And yeah, I mean that's why I did it, right? But then like you get to the actual like day-to-day operations, and it is a shit show. Like the amount of like stuff involved. Mostly I'm doing it like instead of college, right? Like it's a learning experience. It's firsthand business experience. But the brand is like super successful. I don't know any brand that's been like this like relevant, I guess, a year and a half in with no funding, like no VC funding or anything. Even if you include those teams, we're doing pretty well. But it's
And again, for those of you that don't know, Reynad is the owner of Team Tempo Storm, who have teams in Heroes of the Storm, Hearthstone, CS:GO, and as well as the fighting game
anymore.
Yeah, not CS:GO anymore, but fighting game community too. So
never
Frodan,
buying an NA team.
Still vice president.
never buying an NA team. What?
He's Frodan is VP of operations. So
Yeah, he's still vice president of operations. Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just checking.
But yeah, so that's sort of. That's basically like how it's been. I guess I don't really know. That's why I did it. To ask that question, I guess I don't know if there's another question. But.
I mean, you're going to continue doing it now, right? I mean, you don't sound happy about it, so it's just like
it's just, dude. It's just, I mean, the amount of like, imagine like managing like 5 to 20 just children, right? And like, imagine like the kind of human being that has to become. Like the kind of lifestyle you have to live to be a world-class player. There's a game that 30 million people play, and at the age of 19, you're one of the top 5, right? Imagine what kind of lifestyle that is. It sure as hell doesn't involve real work. It involves like an upper-middle-class family, good internet, 8 hours of gaming a day for the past decade, and that's these are the kinds of players you're trying to manage, right? So it's like you're paying them thousands of dollars to play games and stuff, and then you ask them to make a fucking guide or something. And they're like, oh, I'm not going to do that, You ask them to do it like once a week.
That's boring as fuck. Why do I want to do that?
They don't even say that. They're just like, they feel like they're really earning that. They're contributing. Like, to be fair, like, I fucking love players. I'm a player myself. A very good relationship with all my players. And I'm not saying my players do this, right? None of the ones we have right now do this. But imagine this world, right, where it's like they're getting paid thousands of dollars to contribute very little to society. They're like a niche entertainment industry talent, and it's just so infuriating sometimes, man. But there are a lot of upsides, right? Sometimes you invest it. Sometimes you have like a group of hardworking guys. They have great work ethic. They're talented. They put in the hours. They work through their shit, and then you see them win, and it's just the most satisfying feeling in the world. So there's definitely like both sides of it, right? I don't want to be all negative about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it's good that it gets balanced out. I mean, the way that you and Stephen are talking about players as if what we've got is a group of autistic savants.
That's very close.
That's what I would consider most players. It's actually ridiculous. Like, I've talked to players before who have a living on computers who think that, like, their graphics cards, like they needed help figuring some shit out of the computer. I was like, yeah, sure, what kind of GPU do you have? And they're like, I think it's, like, the Intel Pentium, maybe? Like, literally, these conversations. Like, are you fucking serious? This thing that you're on for...
But just to sort of dial it back into reality for a moment, it's not an esports unique problem. I hope everybody would understand this. I've been involved in mainstream sports coaching in the past, and if you actually want to be the best and you want to commit to being the best at anything, there is sacrifices that you have to make, and these sacrifices will always invariably come at the cost of genuine life experiences. Now, if you were to talk to a professional footballer, as indeed I have, you will come across some very interesting people. I've met professional footballers in their late 20s who still don't know how to operate a washing machine or a cooker or anything like that. They're incapable of household tasks. They've never had to do it.
Or driving,
what
driving is probably
Yeah,
one of the things that
driving,
nobody ever
exactly.
does anymore. Yeah.
What the clubs do, the teams do, is they put in an infrastructure for them. So the only thing they have to concentrate on is being good at the game,
Sure.
because ultimately that is their bottom line. And indeed, it's the players' bottom line as well. The better they are, the more money they can make, the better it is for their employers, etc., etc. So the idea that when we talk about players as being like somehow ridiculous figures when compared to other athletes, it's simply not true. They're actually in line with my experience of professional athletes as well.
Yeah, that's true. So, but the only difference is like you said, there's an entire infrastructure set up to kind of support.
Yeah, the baseline's much higher. I mean, these people are out of college.
And that was
they're
where
not
I was
kids.
getting to.
They're not, like,
maybe we need to revise our infrastructure slightly in esports.
Yeah, sure.
Is
I mean, but generally, the age, we're talking teenagers and people in their low 20s, right? I mean, that's definitely a different demographic or a different space than we were talking about professional athletes who are, majority of them finish college, right? And
finish.
Well,
whatever,
especially football players, soccer players, football players, right? The majority of them, I don't think there are any teenagers playing in Premier League right now, right? Like, I don't know what the exact requirements are, but they're definitely, they're definitely more about
how it works in football is you have to stay in education. You have to get a basic level of education, but you get special dispensation for classes and stuff, so you can continue.
For American football, you have to go to school, but I've heard a lot of different stories.
Well, you have to go to 2 years, right?
And like the majors they take are oftentimes very easy, and the schools are treated as seriously, and they can kind of slide on a few things.
There's a whole other discussion for that. We'll take an entire show.
There's been numerous stories.
Let's not pretend that we have.
No, I'm
not. Like electrical engineer quarterbacks is like the norms or some shit, or like biochemical engineering linebackers and shit. Like,
but we're just talking about
absolutely not.
Yeah, we're talking about like just bare essentials, those type of things. People not knowing how to do that. But getting back to Reynad, so challenges. How do you keep the big teams from poaching your players right now?
Well, a lot of ways, right? Like, we pay them what they're worth, right? We don't undercut salaries or anything like that. We pay players more than they're worth almost always. Hearthstone players worth very little in the space, by the way, no matter the size. Every players have different values in every game, and it's a lot of fucking. You have to list the specific numbers, but basically, we pay them well, we treat them well, have good relationships with the players, we promote them well. Like, if we're doing our job well, they shouldn't have a reason to leave, basically. So yeah, like we've never been poached. On top of that, any team that tries, we fuck them. Like, fuck them bad. But that's I'm not gonna list the specific ways how.
Okay, all right. That's interesting.
I'm intrigued.
PR on the business side, on sponsor relations, like.
Okay, yeah.
If somebody does something that is just unhealthy for the industry, or something that's just like clear-cut legitimate scum, and they have to go pretty far over the line for this to happen. But then I just make sure that the people who matter know about it,
Right.
I make sure it's not a biased viewpoint from me. Like, I make sure I have logs. I make sure I
Yeah. Of course.
Even if it's not like a clear-cut bad thing, like you can still get fucking crucified in PR. Like we just saw it happen to the we just talked about this last Unfiltered. What was the website with the guy with the Hearth Arena or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Where that
always get your blows in first.
Yeah, just from reading both sides, that seemed like something that initially looked very clear-cut, but probably isn't as clear-cut as it was made out to be, and that already came to the PR arena where everybody could take sides and be cutthroat as fuck about it. Yeah.
Well, that's a great example of just like pure unprofessionalism, where the business relationship doesn't work out, negotiations don't work out.
Time to go public.
That was misinterpretation of Reddit meta there, because I think
No, that wasn't Reddit's bad at all. That was all the guys.
But he released it to Meta on purpose. I mean, he wrote his whole explanation on Reddit, so he obviously was expecting a different result.
So let's talk about the machinery of what Reynad's actually alluding to. I can give a very specific, glorious example of this. And this, again, ties into what I'm talking about with the team owners cartel. Obviously, when Chris Badawi... It's the best way to... It's the actual way they're operating. Now, when Chris Badawi came into League of Legends, I'm sure we all remember him. He played a little bit fast and loose in talking to players, but actually the vast majority of his poaching attempts weren't covered by any rules within competitive League of Legends because the Challenger Series is exempt in League of Legends. Riot Games do this deliberately because they don't want to have to police that scene because it's an absolute shit show. And yet when he was basically accused of doing these things, they managed to press gang a independent journalist, that's Travis Gafford, of course, somebody who started the attack on Chris Badawi with an interview with the Team Liquid owner, co-owner Steve Arhenset. And let's be clear about the relationship there. Travis Gafford took a free holiday to Maui to create content for Team Liquid. Undeniable fact. So he starts with that, and then the follow-up is about 8 pieces, I think it was, from team owners, including Reginald, saying Badawi had attempted to poach Bjergsen, of which there was no evidence, but they published that anyway. They also published, I think it was the old team Impulse owners, saying we agree with Riot's rulings, even though we've had no dealings with Chris Badawi, nor have we met Chris Badawi. And I know behind the scenes, all of these team owners were basically trying to push him out. What was Chris Badawi's biggest crime? Well, apart from talking to some of their players, again, well within the rules, he was also talking about creating a better deal for players and having contracts that best suited players. And all these team owners came together to basically fuck him potentially out of ownership, and indeed Riot Games, despite having never done this for a CLG, who have been found guilty of poaching on multiple instances, having not done it when TSM failed to control their players, Bjergsen when he moved to TSM, and he was found guilty of poaching. They've never done it in the past. They actually said that Badawi has to recuse himself from ownership if Renegades want to play in the LCS. So this is how you stop poaching. You do it by banding together, and fucking over anyone, exactly like Reynad said. And that's the form that it takes, unfortunately.
I mean, you can spin a lot of wonderful stories that way, but until there's is there evidence of that happening that way? Because there really are two sides to every story, right? Is that...
Well, according to Travis Gafford, there was 8 sides to this story, none of them accurate, of course. You can
sure, but how can you prove that? Right?
It's all verifiable. It's all verifiable. A Daily Dot report that independently assessed the statements came out and proved multiple examples of the statements were false, and indeed Team Gravity's owner admitted to having lied to get Chris Badawi in trouble. That's how you prove it, through journalism.
All right, 2016, Reynad. So what do you think about sponsorships? And I mean, everybody's basically gearing up for this, or talking that 2016 is going to be an enormous year. I mean, Richard's been talking about it, and lots of other.
It's a good time to be in CS:GO.
Yeah. Sure. Is it only going to be a CS:GO?
Yeah, nothing else is scaling much, believe it or not.
Really?
The things that are big are remaining big. Hearthstone, I would even say, is on a slight decline, but not even that's just purely on the esports revenue side. It's very hard to find a sponsor that wants to get behind an iPad game player, it's very we call it esports, but it's not the image of esports that 35-year-old marketing department managers have in bigger companies. When they think esports, they think big stages, action, high APM plays, and you see Hearthstone, and it's
actual observer interface.
Yeah, I don't think Hearthstone will never get to that point, but it can still be a secondary.
It will, but it needs to do it in a different way. But yeah, Hearthstone,
exactly.
Hearthstone I think will always be top 4 esport. It's pretty big, just unique.
Okay. Well, so to be completely honest, I'm a little concerned with the Hearthstone space because, I mean, you tell me what you think of this.
I'll fix it.
Yeah, you know what I mean, though. It's top heavy. It's I feel like, especially the people at the very top.
Life is top heavy, man.
Everything
is
industry.
Top
yeah.
heavy.
No, but
there's no esports.
No, but here's the thing. On League of Legends, it's top. Let's just say streamers, right? League of Legends streamers, they're for the most part going to be joining some League of Legends team at some point. You know what I mean? They're not variety gamers that just happen to be in Hearthstone, just in League of Legends, where I feel like Hearthstone, you still got these guys who are main figures in Hearthstone right now, but and they're making most of their money in revenue, and that's why they're staying in Hearthstone. But in the past, they've been variety gamers, and there's always that risk that they could leave the space and take a lot of those.
Well, everybody is a variety gamer before they settle on an esport. Do you think Trump is about to just say fuck it, I'm going to go stream Fallout 4 now is.
I don't know, but it concerns me when somebody like Forsen says that he's just completely bored with Hearthstone, like in a public.
Everyone
interview.
says they're bored in Hearthstone.
Yeah, literally every single person that plays Hearthstone says it.
Or he doesn't enjoy playing Hearthstone anymore. When you say you don't enjoy playing Hearthstone anymore, that's.
I mean, maybe I'm
that's
biased, but Hafu told me, and it's not a secret. She said she tells us family. She says she hates it and she's bored as fuck playing it. She says that she's talked to a lot of other pros that play the same. Reynad might have more.
Yeah, but
that
doesn't
was the
concern
first
you?
one to complain.
I know
did it
you
a year
were.
and a half ago.
Well, I know you
I got shit on by the community for it too. But, so I've
So
kept quiet.
there's no concern about that, Andre, at all.
If big names leave any scene, yes, it's gonna hurt the scene, right? Every esport is gonna have that issue. But they're not going to leave as long as they're hitting those numbers, right? Like the scene would have to degrade before the players choose to leave, sort of, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If Hearthstone numbers start dwindling and guys like Trump and Crip are averaging like 10K, 5K, then you're gonna see a transition. But if the Hearthstone scene's healthy, it depends on the viewer, right? People want to watch Hearthstone still. And as long as people want to watch Hearthstone, big names in Hearthstone will continue to stream it. And I mean, you still see like stream, like let's say a big name in Hearthstone is streaming, right? Like one of like the top 5 streamers. Mm-hmm. And there's these like I don't know, it sounds like kind of mean.
It's tiered.
Like,
it's very definitely tiered.
There's these tier 2 streamers, right? You're like which are
Savitz
still huge streams, right? Savitz, Kibblers,
Kibler,
those guys.
Mm-hmm.
If they stream at the same time as the big streamers, they'll get like 2 to 4K, right? Which is like decent streams for Hearthstone.
Yeah.
But then like when all the big names are offline, which is kind of like a scenario where if the big names were to leave, then all of a sudden they're averaging like, maybe they can get 10K, 12K sometimes. So yeah, it just depends really.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, 2015 is kind of the test year for esports in general. Like outside of Hearthstone, I don't want to bore Destiny and Richard to death talking about.
No, Destiny plays Hearthstone.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
we both.
Actually, Richard plays Hearthstone.
I got
too.
to be one of those Twitch streamers when Crip was gone or whatever, and I could pull like 6K at night because no other big people were streaming. But then fucking show or some bullshit would log in, and I would start to lose it again. But I feel like I hear that statement a lot. I feel like every year is the test year for esports, but I think that's kind of like a good statement because I think we're realizing that like every single year, pretty much across the not across the board, but pretty much every single year, like esports as a whole is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So I
really do think 2015 was a test year because now in 2016, the like hardware manufacturers that have like built these teams, they've funded so much of esports for so long, they can't even afford a lot of the bigger names anymore. A lot of the bigger brands in the space. Like that's how far the market rate of esports sponsorship has gone up. Mm-hmm. So anyway, 2016, a lot of VC funding. We have Russian oligarchs backing Polish CS:GO teams. We have like, this is it's serious shit now.
What about Team Tempest Storm?
Team Tempest Storm,
Sponsor
2016. Basically, I'm gonna keep trying to grow. I don't want. Here's the thing, right? Most big orgs, they have their team thing. That's what they do. They have their players. They get sponsorships with the players. That's like their one branch. That's what they do. For us, we're gonna do more than that. Yeah, we're gonna have the team. We're gonna have event production, like we've been doing for 2 years. Mm-hmm. We're gonna have like a lot bigger scale stuff, a lot of big stuff, and then that's gonna be a huge branch. The website itself, I'm gonna have a new model, which I'll announce in a few months. That right now it's just like a strategy site, right? Like it's decent. It gets like 7 million hits a month.
Wait, new model. We talking subscription here?
No.
Okay, good.
No, I'm talking about like the thing the website was meant to do for 2 years now that I just haven't had the staff to make it do. It will do.
Okay. So, are you hiring the Hearth Arena guys?
No, they're dead to me from a business sense. Are you kidding? This is what I mean by shunning, right? I see somebody make a Reddit post like that. It will never work for me ever again, or with me, or anything. Like, but anyway, yeah. So those are the 3 things. The Hearth Arena thing isn't. I don't know. Who gives a fuck, man? I'm not big on arena strategy. We could be though, but it's not a big priority for me. No, but yeah, it's a lot of big stuff. Unfortunately, I can't announce too much of it. But,
do you see what he said? Do you see what he just said there? Where he's like, "Fuck arena." I told you. See, constructive players always hate arena players.
No, we had this debate. We had this debate last show, Andre. That
it's fucking true,
There's
dude.
team constructive versus team arena. When there's not like both parties. I mean,
yeah, man. I invented the only arena tournament that exists.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah, because he just wanted that money. He just wanted that money. Doesn't even count. Doesn't even fucking count. You said it earlier. Production's the only money, man.
It's true.
All right, well, let's take a quick break, and then we'll continue with some Oddshot TV and Game Awards discussion. Good stuff.
God, here it goes.
All right, be
At
back.
least we're all going to agree on this one, right?
Yeah.
That's true. All right.